And these are two of the things that I think we're seeing happening today in the LOHAS thing. There's that shift in values, and there's also a shift in caring. And there's another thing that's happening, which is a whole questioning of a sort of materialistic attitude that's really bred into us, hypnotized into us in a way since the moment we're born. There's a basic belief system that runs through our culture. I call it the materialist mindset, which says if you're not happy, if you're not at peace, which is really what we're all looking for. Ultimately, what we're all looking for is to feel better inside. We do lots of different things in the world, but if you analyze it, all the different things we do, our work, our family life, the little things we do, we're doing them because we hope in one way or another it's going to make us feel more satisfied, more fulfilled, more at ease, a deeper sense of meaning, whatever it is. But ultimately, what we're looking for is to feel better in ourselves. And we are hypnotized into this belief that if we're not feeling good, then go out and do something, get something, and as people have often quipped, we become human havings and human doings rather than human beings. But it's so inbred in our culture, we don't really question it. I think we all know, again, that inner truth, we know deep inside it's not true. But I think this is the reason why so much of our culture consumes so much more than we need. We sort of have this belief that if we just had a bit more, we would actually be happy. If I just had this, if I just had that. And how much advertising preys on that. And you just look at, I'm not saying everybody, organizations here are probably a bit more conscious, I hope so. I'll talk about this more later, but so much advertising is basically saying, you can't be happy as you are. Get this, whatever it is, product, service, whatever it is, you will feel better. I think what that leads to is almost an addictive pattern in our culture. And so we get something, we buy a new jacket or whatever it is, and we do feel a little bit better for a short time, but the effect soon wears off, and so we're looking for something else. And we're in this sort of treadmill of looking for things, getting a fix, we feel a bit better, and then we go and get something else. And it's this belief system which is driving so much of the excessive consumption in our culture. There's also, I think, what's behind the love of money, which so many people have pointed out is the root of a lot of our problems, is we love money because we have the belief if I had more money, I will feel better, I will better buy the things, the opportunities, the experiences that will give me that temporary fix. And the tragedy is it doesn't really work. There's a lot of studies that have been done over the years of which cultures are the happier culture, and time and again it turns out that it's not the cultures that have all the things that are actually the happier. They're often the least happy cultures, because then there's so much worry about, am I going to lose the things, what's the next thing? It actually feeds discontent. And then we start getting into this sort of controlling mode of consciousness where we feel, how's the future going to be? Am I going to have the right things in the future? We start worrying, we start fearing. And the sad joke here is, I think what happens to a lot of people is they're so busy worrying about whether they're going to be at peace in the future, they never have the opportunity to be at peace in the present. It's almost by definition, if you're busy worrying about the future, you cannot be at peace in the present. So it actually takes away from us on a personal level. And what I see is, and what's really been a fuel for a lot of my work, is that the crisis we're facing, the environmental crisis and all its different facets, is really a crisis of consciousness. That the old way of consciousness that has worked pretty well for centuries, eons really, we've reached a time where that self-centered, materialistic way of consciousness cannot work anymore. And if you look at it, most of the problems we face on a global level come back in one way or another to human thinking, human decisions, human values. And most of those are based upon this sort of deep-seated materialistic mindset that's about how can we take from the world, use the world in order to feed our inner well-being. And we talk a lot about, particularly here at LOHAS, about sustainability and sustainable practices. And there's a lot we can do in terms of the outer world, in terms of becoming more sustainable as people, as organizations. But I think the real root of the unsustainability of our current culture is the unsustainability of this mode of consciousness. And that's where I think this spiritual shift that is happening comes in. Because almost every single teaching that's come up has really questioned this materialistic mindset and said that it's actually not really true. How you feel is not really a question of what you have or do or what's going on around you. There's actually a choice we have about how we feel. But we easily allow ourselves to become the victims of the circumstances. I mean, a very simple example of this I use a lot when I'm working in the corporate world is just asking people, how many people get stressed by being in a traffic jam? Well, how many of you get stressed by being in a traffic jam? Be honest. It's actually not true. A traffic jam doesn't have the power to make anybody stressed. We think it does, and we fall victim to it. But what's happening when you're caught in a traffic jam is actually the most restful part of driving there can be. It's the least stressful part of driving. You haven't got to control anything, there's nothing bad about to happen to you. But the mind is going off a bit into the future of what the bad things that could happen to you in the future if you're late. You know, what you might miss, how people might criticize you, whatever it is. The mind is getting into its fantasy. And that's bringing up fear, and that's triggering the stress response. Somebody else could be sitting in exactly the same situation, and they could be saying to themselves, this is wonderful. This is the sort of situation I've been waiting for all day long. Yeah. No meetings, nobody coming in, asking me to solve their problems. I was going to say no email beeping at me, but with BlackBerrys and iPhones, that's no longer true. But the point is, the difference is nothing to do with what's happening out there. The difference between one person getting stressed and probably getting closer to a heart attack and the other person taking the chance to really relax is purely in the mind. And I think this is what so many of the great spiritual teachings, philosophies have woken up to. I say philosophies, one of my favorite quotes is from Epictetus, Greek philosopher from the 2nd century, who said, people are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them.